was always the Jags. It was always the Jags. It was always the Jags. Always the Jags. Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags. As you guys can see, I am very excited to be discussing our next game against the Houston Texans and what exactly happened there. So we all know the Texans game ended up 24-20. Wish I could say the Jacksonville Jaguars got the dub. We had, again, it's hard to believe this is the third time I'm saying this, but multiple chances to put the game away and come away with a victory. And we missed them all. Every single one. You know, if that Houston's player that knocked Tank Bigsby out of bounds on that really long touchdown one, not only did he end up saving that touchdown, but he saved the game. And I'm of the mind that I think a touchdown is very different there. Like, to me, if you're in goal, your team should be able to get a touchdown. Good teams will go get that touchdown. And so I can't really knock Doug for going for it on fourth down. The only thing I can say is that if it's fourth down and we kick the field goal, right? Now the pressure is on the Texans to go get a touchdown. They have to get a touchdown. There's no other way around it. They have to get a touchdown. So that changes the play calling because they can't just get into field goal range. Like before, the Texans were playing into field goal range and they ended up getting the touchdown, instead. So that changes the whole way that Ryan Nielsen, now Ryan Nielsen is at the advantage because he can play a game because he knows the Texans have to go down and get that touchdown. Secondly, if the Texans do go get the touchdown and the Jaguars get the ball back, now all we have to do is get a field goal in order to still win. But the way it went, we went for it on a weird empty set. They brought it up on the podcast a little bit ago. The Jaguars never play empty. So trying to figure out what we were going to do, even the announcer called it. It was a quarterback draw. Like, that's unimaginative play calling. That's unimaginative. And like, if you're going to go five wide, like at least bounce it to the outside or something. It's unimaginative play calling and it didn't work. And, and in the press conference, Doug was like, he was talking about like, hey, could you take over play calling duties or something to try to switch this up? And he's like, oh, why would I do it? I thought Press Taylor called a great game. And, Doug Pedersen was like, yeah, he's like, players, as coaches, we can't go out and execute the plays. And it's like, I understand that to a suspect, the point the players have to go play it. But as the coaches, you have to call a play that is going to be successful based upon your players. And that's how you call your plays. Like, you don't just call a play because you think, oh, this play is really good, I really like it, even if I don't think my players can execute it. Even if you think, I'm not sure, like, it's like, oh yeah, it's got to be blocked up perfectly, obviously, but I like this play, I think it's going to work, and these players are going to execute it because I said so. It's not how it works. They got to actually be able to do it. And, it's really sad that Brandon Sheriff, who, makes $18 million a year, can't block Foye Fatukasi. And that's what happened on the QB draw. But even Ezra Cleveland couldn't get off his guy because Trevor was sandwiched between two different guys. And so it's like, on paper, it seems like a great play if you, number one, play a lot of empty. It's like, first of all, if the commentators are calling out that they know what you're about to do, it's not a great play call. If the commentators are like, oh, he's going empty, it's going to be a QB draw. Okay, it's not a great play call. That's not a great game. And secondly, if your players can't execute it, it's not a good play call. If they've executed it in practice, like, I don't know, Brandon Sheriff got beat so badly, it makes me think that they can't execute it in practice. And to me, like, watching the first 3-4 games in the season, there hasn't been much convincing me that Brandon Sheriff can hold up in one-on-one. I haven't got a whole lot of reason to believe that. Ezra Cleveland, I was a little surprised because he seems like he's playing better, and it's sad because like that was the worst time for the offensive line to not hold up because for the most of the game they held up and Trevor had a pocket. Um, but even that's not even the worst part because again that was 4th and goal. Like as much as we want to blame Doug or blame Press or something like that, this game is completely on Trevor. I'm sorry, it's completely on Trevor. Like, and I love Trevor Lawrence. I think he's the best quarterback our franchise has had, one of the best that I've ever been able to see. And I don't know what's wrong with him right now. Uh, but that was part of why I was like, I'm not sure I would pay him yet. Because first of all, I'd want to make sure he was healthy after, the injuries affected his play last year. And secondly, I want to see him play like a $55 million quarterback. And he's not doing it. He missed 2 wide open touchdowns. It's funny because like if you look at the Texans game from last year and then the one this year, exact same play, exact same receiver, except it was completely different on who missed it. Because in the Texans game last year, where we ended up winning 24-20, Calvin Ridley was in that same spot in the corner of the end zone, and he dropped the ball. The ball hit him in his hands, and he dropped it. This year, Brian Thomas Jr. was in the exact same spot at the end zone. This time, because like Calvin Ridley was open, but he still had a guy like all over him. This time, Brian Thomas Jr. was completely wide open, and Trevor just missed him. Now, again, I'm not going to act like I can make, a 55-yard touchdown throw down the seam, but I don't make $55 million. I'm not getting paid like an elite quarterback who makes those throws in their sleep. That's the difference. That's where we're at. I don't know if the contract changes. The contract shouldn't change a whole lot, but it's like when you do that, again, that contract, you take away from other parts of your team because you can't, that salary cap space that you can't fill up. So you're expecting your quarterback to kind of cover that. And right now he's not. And then he had another wide open touchdown to Christian Kirk. We should have really, in all honesty, I mean, the Texans penalized themselves so much. It felt like they were trying to give us the game and we like literally just wouldn't accept it. And nobody could cover Nico Collins. But like if Trevor hits those 2 throws, we should have blown out the Texans. Like that's 3 touchdowns. That's 2 touchdowns off the board from Trevor. And then there's one where, again, if we're at the 4-yard line, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get the ball in. And I mean, got to credit the Texans defense for holding up at the goal line. Maybe we really do miss Evan Ingram that much, and this would have been the guy to throw it to. But like I said, as like Press Taylor, it's like, yeah, if you've got plays and you're like, hey, it's not Press Taylor's fault if his players can't execute the plays, right? But it is his fault for calling the play anyway. So if your guys can't execute it, don't play it, call another one. And if your players can't execute any of the plays in your book, then you either have to go to Trent Baalke and ask for new players or go make a new playbook that they can't execute. Like those are your 2 options, because the players that can't execute will get cut and get moved on. And like, I don't like, I just don't, there's so many things I just don't get. Because I know Press Taylor called in the second half of 2022, and that's the games like we came back in a lot of those games. I was at that Cowboys game and it was awesome. But for some reason, whatever he's doing right now, it's not clicking. And I don't know, like it feels like Doug is afraid to say like it's Press's fault, or he just genuinely feels like it's not his fault. But like I said, everything he said, like especially when he was like, we as the coaches can't execute the plays. I mean, that's the kind of media bite that could lose you the locker room. And we might be looking at another coach. And I'm like, as a Jaguars fan, it's like, I don't want to go through this again. I really don't. I don't want to go through, let's fire Doug, bring in another coach. Let's fire Press Taylor, bring in another offensive coordinator, new system to learn. And then in 3 years after the cap hit finally becomes manageable, we'll move on from Trevor and go get another quarterback. So we're going to be the last team and we're going to be in the bottom of the NFL for the next 3 years again. Like, we don't want to go through that, but now we have to, because I don't know if Press Taylor just like refuses to evolve, or if like teams have figured him out and he's like, nah, you can't figure this out. Like, that's the thing. Like, good offensive coordinators will also change up things in their schemes from week to week, you know, to have it make sense and, you know, to evolve. Like, as people see your game plan and see what you're putting out on film. But like I said, if I had one person I would blame, it would be Trevor. Like, he cost us the game. Those are 2 touchdowns we should have had. And 1-3 looks and feels a lot better than 0-4, especially because, you know, first of all, pulling that off, I thought we would have lost that game. So pulling that off would have been a miracle. And second of all, you know, our next 3 games are like, if we don't win against these next games, I don't know how. Like, we're just the bottom feeding team. There's no other way around it. Because we've got, in that case, I would say someone needs to get fired and someone needs to change. Because we've got the Colts next at Everbank. And while Joe Flacco is playing, and that does kind of scare me, the Colts aren't supposed to win at Everbank. And their defense should be the best, easiest one that Trevor has faced all season. And if he doesn't carve them up, there's something going wrong with him. After that, we have the Patriots, who have a very good defense, but their offense is not there at all. And that's in London, so we should beat them. And then we have Caleb Williams and the Bears, who's still trying to find his footing, you know. So those should all be winnable, very winnable games. And if we beat the Texans, you come out of that stretch with a winning record. Now you're 4-3. Suddenly everything looks completely different. Completely different. Because you got a winning record. Now, even if we run the table on these next 3, we come out 3-4, which is still a losing record. And then we really get into the meat of our schedule, because we've got the Packers and the Vikings back to back, and we didn't know how good they were going to be this year. So, you know, it's disappointing on all levels. I think one thing that no one's talking about when we talk about the Jaguars, because we're the only team without a win in the NFL. Like, that's something you got to look around the locker room and say. But you also got to look at, we're the only team in the NFL that faced 4 playoff teams from last year in a row. We're the only team in the NFL that did it. No other team has had to face 4 playoff teams. So, like, if you give our schedule that we had the first 4 games, no, like, they were playoff teams, but they weren't like world beater. Like, it wasn't like we had to face the Chiefs and the Ravens, and I mean, we faced the Bills, but, you know, it wasn't like they were world beating teams, but they were still playoff teams from last year. Miami was a playoff team, so was Cleveland, so was Houston, and obviously so was Buffalo. So it's not like we faced, like, you know, Bears, Patriots, you know, like other teams. Like, you know, if you give the Panthers our schedule, if the Panthers had our schedule, do you see them coming out 1-3, or are they going to be 0-4 like us? Give the Patriots our schedule. The Patriots did beat the Bengals, but everyone knows Joe Burrow starts slow. If you give the Patriots our schedule, are they coming out 0-4? And sure, teams have been beating up the Dolphins, but that's because Tua got hurt. And, you know, the Bills just did get their clocks cleaned by the Ravens, so that makes our loss look even worse. The only thing I will say is the fact that the Browns have literally looked like the worst team in the NFL. They got beat by the Giants, who Daniel Jones is a quarterback. Let's just break this down for a second. Because most Jacksonville Jaguars fans love the fact that we don't have Daniel Jones, but like, Trevor is obviously way better than Daniel Jones in our minds. Why could Daniel Jones beat the Browns defense, but Trevor Lawrence couldn't? Exact same defense. No one was hurt. Nothing changed. Jim Schwartz, still same coordinator. Daniel Jones beat them, and Trevor Lawrence couldn't. Both have a rookie wide receiver. And Trevor arguably has more weapons outside of that. Trevor arguably has better protection. Trevor's supposed to have better coaching. So why could Daniel Jones do it and Trevor couldn't? That's the question that needs to be asked. And Trevor was at home. I can't remember if Jones was at home or not, but that just gives more in that favor. And then the Browns lost to a to a Devontae Adams-less Raiders squad. I don't even know if Max Crosby was playing. Took away their only receiving threat, and the Raiders still won by double digits. So the Browns are one of the worst teams, and the fact that we got beat by them should make every Jaguar player just sick to his stomach. That's a game that we definitely should have won. And the fact that it was so close tooth and nail doesn't make any sense either. So, hard questions. I don't know where the answer is because no one's coming to save our franchise. For the Bills last year, Joe Brady, they recommitted to the run game, got James Cook going. He schemed up some better things, and suddenly their offense has been cooking ever since, except for last night except for a couple nights ago against the Ravens. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts, Jags fans. Where are you at? Where are you headed? Are we ready for another season of poverty? I'm like, as a fan, we deserve so much better than this. So many teams go through, like, you watch Jaden Daniels just tearing it up with the Commanders. Arguably less around him than Trevor has right now. And we just deserve better. It's a franchise. The fans, we just deserve better. I think there's no other way to put it. You know, we put our money into these games. We put our heart, soul, and tears, our blood, sweat, and tears. And we deserve better than what we're getting. And everybody's got to take that on. And there's different people to blame for every single game. But someone's got to go fix it because we deserve more. That's it. So let me know your thoughts. And again, might look bleak now, but it was still always the Jags.